The Grand Assembly Hall stretched across 3 kilometers of polished metal and crystal. Ambassador Veltar had seen this room welcome hundreds of species over his long career. But today felt different. The newest applicants were walking through the massive doors now, humans from a small blue planet called Earth. Veltar studied them as they approached. They looked so ordinary. 2 arms, 2 legs, 1 head, nothing special. Their leader was a woman with dark hair pulled back in a simple style. She wore a plain blue uniform with small metal badges. Behind her walked 6 others, all looking around the hall with curious eyes. The Galactic Council had done this dance thousands of times. A new species develops faster than light travel. They make contact. The Council evaluates what they can offer. Terms are discussed. Eventually, everyone reaches an agreement. It was as natural as breathing. Council Speaker Throgan rose from his elevated platform. His 4 arms spread wide in the traditional greeting gesture. His voice boomed through the translators placed throughout the hall. Welcome, humans of Earth, to the Grand Assembly of the Galactic Council. We gather today to discuss your species' entry into our great civilization. The human woman stepped forward. Her translator badge flickered as she spoke. Thank you for this meeting. I am Ambassador Sarah Chen, representing the United Earth Government. Excellent, Throgan continued. Let us begin with the standard evaluation. The Keth-Mori economists have completed their analysis of your civilization. A tall, thin alien with gray skin approached the center of the hall. His 6 eyes focused on a floating display screen. Numbers and charts appeared in the air above them. Humans occupy 7 planetary systems, the economist announced. They possess significant deposits of rare metals on 12 worlds. Their population stands at 42 billion across all colonies. Military capabilities include 3,000 starships of various classes. Veltar nodded along with the other ambassadors. These numbers were typical for a new species. Nothing impressive, but enough to contribute meaningfully to the Council. Based on this analysis, the economist continued, we calculate humanity's appropriate contribution to Council resources. 60% of rare Earth elements from all human worlds. 40% of agricultural output. Complete integration of human military forces under Council command. In exchange, humans will receive faster-than-light navigation technology, access to Council trade routes, and protection from hostile forces. The terms were standard, perhaps even generous. Some species had to give up 70% of their resources. Veltar expected the usual response. Some minor protests, a request for better terms, maybe a few days of negotiation. Then acceptance and a celebration feast. Ambassador Chen listened to the translation without changing expression. The hall fell quiet as everyone waited for her response. She looked at the floating numbers for a long moment. Then she looked directly at Speaker Throgan. No. The word hung in the air like a physical thing. Veltar felt his breathing apparatus stutter. Around the hall, hundreds of aliens shifted uncomfortably. The translator systems buzzed and clicked, checking and rechecking the simple word. I apologize, Throgan said slowly. There may have been a translation error. Could you repeat your response? Chen's expression remained calm. No. We decline your offer. The silence stretched longer this time. Veltar had been present for over 300 first contact negotiations. No species had ever said no to the initial offer. They always negotiated. They always found a way to make it work. The system depended on it. Perhaps, Throgan said, his voice showing strain. You do not fully understand the benefits of Council membership. Let me explain in more detail. He activated another display. Images of great cities, massive starships, and prosperous worlds filled the air above them. The Council protects over 10,000 species across the galaxy. Our technology has eliminated poverty, war, and suffering from countless worlds. Our trade networks ensure prosperity for all members. Chen nodded politely. It sounds like a wonderful system for your current members. Then surely you see the value of joining us? I see the value you offer to others. But the price is too high for us. A wave of whispers rolled across the assembly hall. Representatives leaned toward each other, speaking in dozens of different languages. Veltar caught fragments of conversation. Did she say no again? This is unprecedented. What are they thinking? The Kethmori economist stepped forward again. His voice carried a note of confusion. Ambassador Chen, perhaps you misunderstand. Membership in the Council is not exactly optional for spacefaring. Civilizations. The galaxy is dangerous. Pirates, hostile empires, natural disasters. No single species can handle these threats alone. Chen smiled for the first time since entering the hall. It was not an unfriendly expression, but it held something that made Veltar uncomfortable. Confidence, maybe, or certainty. We appreciate your concern for our safety, she said. But we have managed quite well so far without Council protection. We will continue to do so. But the technology sharing, pressed another Council member, a being covered in blue scales. The faster-than-light navigation alone is worth any price. Without it, you will remain trapped in your local area of space. Our navigation technology works fine for our needs, Chen replied. We have traveled quite far to reach this meeting. This statement caused another stir. Veltar knew that human ships had indeed traveled across significant distances to reach Nexus Prime. Their technology was different from Council standard, but clearly effective. Speaker Throgan raised all four arms for silence. The hall quieted, gradually. Ambassador Chen, I fear there has been some fundamental misunderstanding. The Council system has maintained peace and prosperity in this galaxy for 3,000 years. Every species that has achieved interstellar travel has found their place within our structure. There are no exceptions. Chen looked around the vast hall, taking in the hundreds of alien faces staring at her. Many showed confusion. Others displayed what might have been anger or fear. She turned back to the speaker. With respect, Speaker Throgan, every species until now has found their place in your structure. But perhaps that says more about the options you have offered them than about the necessity of joining. The words hit the assembly like cold water. Veltar felt something twist in his stomach. In all his years of service, he had never questioned the Council system. Species joined because they had to, because it was the only way to survive and prosper in the galaxy, because there was no alternative. But this human woman spoke as if alternatives were possible. We thank you for your time and consideration, Chen continued. The United Earth government has decided to respectfully decline membership in the Galactic Council at this time. We wish you continued success in your endeavors. She turned and walked toward the exit. Her delegation followed, without looking back. The massive doors closed behind them with a soft hiss. The Grand Assembly Hall, which had hosted peaceful negotiations for millennia, erupted into chaos. Voices rose in dozens of languages. Representatives stood and gestured wildly. Some demanded the humans be brought back. Others called for military action. A few sat in stunned silence. Veltar remained frozen in his seat. In 300 negotiations, he had never seen anything like this. The humans had not asked for better terms. They had not requested time to consider. They had simply walked away from the most powerful organization in the galaxy, as if it meant nothing to them. For the first time in his long life, Ambassador Veltar began to wonder if the Council system was as unshakable as he had always believed. And that thought frightened him more than any hostile alien empire ever had. 3 days after the humans left, the Galactic Council was still trying to understand what had happened. In the deepest levels of the Nexus Prime orbital station, teams of xenopsychologists worked around the clock. Dr. Morduk, the Council's leading expert on alien behavior, stared at dozens of screens showing human communication patterns. Run the translation matrix again, he told his assistant, a young Zephyrian named Kless. Sir, we have run it 17 times already. The result is always the same. The human word no translates correctly in all language databases. Morduk's head tentacles twitched with frustration. There must be some cultural context we are missing. No species simply walks away from Council membership. It does not happen. Across the station, similar scenes played out in a dozen different departments. Linguists checked grammar patterns. Historians searched ancient records. Even the military intelligence division tried to understand what could make a species so confident they would reject the protection of the galaxy's strongest alliance. Meanwhile, on Earth, President Elena Vasquez sat in her office overlooking the Pacific Ocean. The blue water sparkled in the afternoon sun. It was hard to believe that just a few days ago representatives of her species had walked out of the most important political meeting in galactic history. Her communication device chimed with an incoming message from Nexus Prime. She activated the holographic display and watched as Speaker Throgan's four-armed form appeared before her. President Vasquez, the alien leader began, his voice carrying through the translation system. I hope this message finds you well. I believe there may have been some confusion during our recent meeting with your delegation. Vasquez leaned back in her chair. She had expected this call. Let me clarify the situation, Throgan continued. Membership in the Galactic Council is not simply an invitation that can be declined. For spacefaring civilizations, it is a necessity. The galaxy contains many dangers that no single species can handle alone. Pirates raid unprotected systems. Ancient machines wake up and destroy entire worlds. Hostile empires from beyond our borders sometimes invade. Only together can we face these threats. The speaker paused, letting his words sink in. I am certain that once Ambassador Chen explains these facts to your government, you will reconsider your position. The Council has prepared a revised offer with slightly better terms. We are willing to reduce your resource contribution to 55% and allow you to maintain some independent military units under Council oversight. The message ended with formal diplomatic pleasantries. Vasquez sat quietly for a moment, then activated her recording system. Speaker Throgan, thank you for your message and for the revised offer. I have discussed the matter thoroughly with our government and people. Our position remains unchanged. We respectfully decline membership in the Galactic Council. She paused, choosing her words carefully. We understand your concerns about galactic dangers. Earth has faced many threats over our long history. We have learned that the best protection comes from being strong enough to defend ourselves and wise enough to choose our allies carefully. We believe we can contribute more to galactic peace and prosperity as an independent civilization than as a tribute-paying member of your organization. The president sent the message and returned to her other work. Outside her window, a small ship lifted off from the nearby spaceport, carrying Earth's first independent trade mission to nearby star systems. When Vasquez's response reached Nexus Prime, it caused even more confusion than the first refusal. Dr. Morda called an emergency meeting of all department heads. They are not just saying no, he announced to the gathered scientists and officials. They are saying no permanently. They claim they can defend themselves and prefer to remain independent. Admiral Zorthak of the Hegemony Fleet slammed his armored fist on the conference table. This is impossible. Their military assessment shows only 3,000 ships. The Council fleet has over 2 million vessels. They cannot seriously believe they can survive without our protection. Maybe, suggested Dr. Kless quietly. They do not know about the real threats in the galaxy. Their civilization is young. They may not understand what dangers exist beyond their local area. Council economist Prime Velthara shook her crystalline head. The economic models do not support their position either. Independent civilizations cannot achieve the same level of prosperity as Council members. The resource sharing and technology exchange systems provide benefits that no single species can match alone. For hours, they debated possible explanations. Perhaps humans had a cultural tendency toward suicide. Maybe their brain structure made them incapable of understanding long-term consequences. Some suggested that Earth had been secretly contacted by a hostile alien empire that was manipulating human decisions. But Dr. Morduke had been studying the recordings of Ambassador Chen during the meeting. Something about her behavior bothered him. She had not seemed confused or frightened or manipulated. She had seemed confident, as if she knew something the Council did not. What if, he said slowly, interrupting the debate around the table, what if the humans actually believe they can succeed without Council membership? The room fell silent. The idea was so alien to their way of thinking that it took several moments to process. "That is impossible," Admiral Zorthak said finally. "No species can thrive alone in modern galactic civilization. The Council system has proven this over 3,000 years of success." "But what if they are not planning to be alone?" Dr. Morduk continued. "What if they intend to create their own system of alliances and partnerships?" This suggestion caused an even longer silence. The implications were disturbing to consider. If humans successfully created an alternative to Council membership, it might encourage other species to leave. The entire foundation of galactic civilization could be threatened. Dr. Velthara was the first to speak. "We need to know what the humans are actually doing. Not what they say they plan to do, but what actions they are taking." Within hours, the Council's intelligence services received new orders. Covert observation missions launched toward human space. Long-range sensors focused on Earth's colonies. Communication intercepts began monitoring human diplomatic channels. What they discovered over the following weeks made their worst fears seem small in comparison. The humans were not simply trying to survive alone. They were building something entirely new. Ships carrying human diplomats traveled to dozens of systems that barely registered on Council charts. These were the territories of minor species, civilizations too small or too poor to interest the Council's economists. But the humans were interested in them. Intelligence reports showed human merchants trading fairly with species that the Council typically ignored. Human ships provided protection for cargo vessels from civilizations too weak to defend themselves. Most shocking of all, humans offered technology and knowledge freely, without demanding tribute or submission in return. Dr. Morduk read the reports with growing alarm. "They are creating a rival system," he told his staff. "Not based on tribute and hierarchy, but on voluntary cooperation and mutual benefit." The implications hit the Council leadership like a physical blow. For 3,000 years, their system had worked because there was no alternative. Species joined the Council because it was the only way to access galactic civilization. But if humans proved that another way was possible, emergency meetings were called. Crisis protocols were activated. For the first time in centuries, the Galactic Council faced a threat that could not be solved with military force or economic pressure. The threat was an idea, and ideas, once released, could spread faster than any starship could travel. 6 months after the humans walked away from Council membership, senior intelligence analyst Crixtel reviewed the most disturbing report of her long career. The data screens around her workstation glowed with charts, graphs, and surveillance, footage that painted a picture of galactic change happening faster than anyone had imagined possible. "Computer, display human expansion rate over the last 6 months, she commanded. A three-dimensional map of local space appeared in the air above her desk. Red dots marked human colonies and outposts. Blue lines showed trade routes. Green indicators represented diplomatic contacts with other species. The map was covered in color. "Impossible," Crixtel whispered to herself. "Show me the comparison with Council expansion rates during the same period." A second map appeared beside the first. This one showed the careful, controlled growth that had characterized galactic civilization for millennia. New Council members were processed slowly, integrated gradually, and developed according to established guidelines. The human expansion looked like an explosion in comparison. Not random or chaotic, but fast and organic, spreading along natural routes of trade and communication rather than following administrative boundaries. But the most concerning aspect was not the speed of human growth. It was who they were growing with. Computer, identify all non-Council species that have established formal relations with humans in the last 6 months. The list that appeared made Crixtel's breathing slits flutter with anxiety. 17 different species had signed cooperation agreements with the human Commonwealth of Worlds. These were not major civilizations that the Council courted for membership. They were the forgotten peoples, too small, too poor, or too remote to matter in Council calculations. The Velkari miners from the Galactic Rim, the Thren agricultural communes that barely qualified as spacefaring, the Osek traders who scraped by in the spaces between Council territories, All of them were now partners with humanity, rather than seeking council membership. Crixtel opened her communication channel to Council Intelligence Chief Morradak. "Sir, you need to see this data immediately." "I am in a briefing with the speaker," came the reply. "Can this wait?" "Sir, with respect, no. What the humans are doing threatens the entire foundation of our civilization." 20 minutes later, Morradak materialized in Crixtel's office via holographic transmission. His scaled features showed the strain of recent weeks. Reports from across council space told the same story: growing questions about the necessity of council membership, whispered conversations about human alternatives, and most alarming of all, formal requests from 3 member species to renegotiate their tribute arrangements. "Show me what you have found," he said without preamble. Crixtel activated her presentation displays. "The humans are not simply surviving outside our system, sir. They are creating a competing system that operates on completely different principles." She highlighted a series of intercepted communications between human ships and various alien species. "Look at this conversation between a human trade vessel and a Thren agricultural station. The humans offer protection for Thren cargo ships in exchange for preferred access to their organic compounds. But notice the key difference. The protection is limited to voluntary missions. The Thren maintain full control of their military, and the humans take only what they pay for at agreed prices." Morradak studied the data carefully. "This is not sustainable. The humans cannot provide effective protection with their limited fleet. The Thren will realize this when they face real danger." "That was my assumption as well," Crixtel replied. "But look at this incident from 3 weeks ago. A new display showed a star system on the outer edge of council space. Pirates attacked a Thren convoy here. Standard council protocol would have been to file a report and perhaps investigate in several months, assuming the Thren were council members, which they are not. What did the humans do? They responded within 18 hours. 2 human ships arrived, drove off the pirates, and escorted the Thren vessels to safety. Then they offered to help the Thren establish their own patrol system to prevent future attacks." Morradak's expression darkened. "Humans cannot be everywhere at once. This level of protection is unsustainable." "You are correct, sir. But the humans have thought of that." Crixtel brought up another map showing the distribution of human alliance partners. "They are not trying to protect everyone directly. Instead, they are helping their partners protect themselves. Technology sharing, training programs, mutual defense agreements. Each species that joins their commonwealth becomes stronger and more capable of defending their neighbors." The intelligence chief stared at the displays for a long moment. "They are creating a network instead of a hierarchy." "Exactly. And it appears to be working. Look at these economic reports." New charts appeared showing trade volumes, resource flows, and technological development rates. The numbers were staggering. Species that had existed at subsistence levels for centuries were showing rapid improvement in living standards within months of joining the human commonwealth. "How is this possible?" Morradak demanded. "The Council's economists have proven that our tribute system is the most efficient way to distribute resources across galactic civilization." Crixtel hesitated before answering. The data she was about to show challenged everything she had been taught about economics and civilization management. "Sir, the human system appears to be more efficient because it eliminates several layers of administrative overhead that exist in our system. When the Council collects tribute from member species, that tribute must be processed through our bureaucracy, evaluated by our economists, and redistributed according to our policies. The humans skip most of these steps." She highlighted specific examples. When the Velkari miners needed new extraction equipment, they would normally petition the Council, wait for evaluation, receive outdated technology suited for general use, and pay tribute for decades to cover the cost. The humans simply traded current mining equipment for raw materials at mutually agreed prices. The transaction was completed in weeks instead of years. But without proper oversight, these species might develop technologies that threaten galactic stability, Morradak protested. "That was my concern as well. But look at what they are actually developing." Crixtel showed examples of human-assisted technological advancement. Better farming techniques, more efficient mining methods, improved communication systems, defensive technologies. Nothing that threatens other civilizations, but everything that makes life better for their own people. The pattern was clear and disturbing. The human commonwealth was not only surviving without council membership, it was thriving. Worse, it was offering a genuine alternative to the council system that appeared to provide better results for its members. Mor Radak stood, silent for several minutes, processing the implications. Finally, he spoke. What is the assessment of how many species might be influenced by the human example? Crixtel activated her final display. It showed a galactic map with species marked by their likelihood of leaving the council system. The amount of red on the map was terrifying. Conservative estimate: 40% of current council members are vulnerable to switching sides if the human system continues to prove successful. Optimistic estimate: 20%. Worst case scenario. She paused. Worst case, the entire council system collapses within a generation. The two intelligence officers stared at the map in silence. 3,000 years of galactic civilization hung in the balance, threatened not by military invasion or economic collapse, but by the simple human belief that cooperation worked better than tribute. Prepare a full briefing for the emergency session, Mor Radak said finally. The council leadership needs to understand what we are facing. As he ended the transmission, Crixtel remained at her workstation studying the data. Somewhere in the back of her mind, a dangerous thought began to form. What if the humans were not threatening galactic civilization? What if they were trying to improve it? She pushed the thought away quickly. Such ideas were not safe for council intelligence officers to consider. But the thought remained, growing quietly in the darkness of her doubts. The Grand Assembly Hall had never seen anything like this emergency session. For only the fourth time in 3,000 years, every council member was required to attend in person rather than by holographic proxy. The vast chamber buzzed with tension as representatives from across the galaxy took their seats. Speaker Throgan stood at the central podium, his four arms spread in a gesture that was meant to calm, but somehow seemed desperate instead. Fellow members of the Galactic Council, we face an unprecedented challenge to our civilization. Ambassador Veltar sat in his usual section, watching the proceedings with growing unease. Around him, representatives whispered in dozens of languages. The worry in their voices was universal, requiring no translation. The human situation has developed beyond what any of us anticipated, Throgan continued. Intelligence Chief Mor Radak will present his findings. The scaled figure of Mor Radak approached the podium, carrying data tablets that seemed to weigh more than physical objects should. Honorable representatives, the human commonwealth of worlds now includes 23 species. Their territory spans over 200 star systems. Their trade networks reach into areas of space we have never considered strategically important. A massive holographic display materialized above the assembly, showing the current state of human expansion. Gasps and exclamations echoed through the hall as representatives saw the scope of what humans had built in less than a year. But the most concerning development, Mor Radak continued, is not their growth. It is the response of our own member species to their example. The display shifted to show internal council communications, request forms, petitions, and formal complaints filed by member species over the past 6 months. The volume was staggering. 47 member species have filed formal requests to renegotiate their tribute arrangements. 12 have threatened to leave the council entirely. 3 have already begun preliminary discussions with human representatives about joining their commonwealth. Admiral Zorthak rose from his seat in the military section, his powered armor humming with barely contained energy. This situation calls for immediate military response. The humans and their allies pose a clear threat to council authority. We should move to neutralize this threat before it spreads further. His words triggered an explosion of voices across the assembly. Some representatives shouted agreement, others protested. The translators struggled to keep up with the overlapping conversations in hundreds of languages. Military action against whom? Demanded Representative Yiltra of the Cosmic Engineers Guild. The humans have committed no acts of aggression. Their allies joined them voluntarily. Are we to make war on species for choosing their own diplomatic partners? The humans are disrupting the natural order of galactic civilization, Admiral Zorthak replied. The Council system has maintained peace and prosperity for millennia. Any threat to that system threatens everyone. From the economics section, Advisor Velthara's crystalline form chimed with harmonic tones that her translator rendered as urgent concern. Military action would confirm the worst fears about Council governance. Many species already view our tribute system as exploitative. If we use force to prevent them from choosing alternatives, we become exactly what human propaganda claims we are, an imperial system rather than a cooperative alliance. The debate raged for hours. Representatives from military backgrounds called for immediate action to force human compliance. Economic advisors worried about the collapse of tribute-based resource flows. Diplomatic corps members argued for negotiated solutions, but as they argued, reports continued to arrive from across Council space. Each message brought worse news. A junior aide approached Speaker Throgan with a communication tablet. The speaker's expression darkened as he read the contents. "I regret to inform the Assembly," Throgan announced, "that the Velkari Confederation has formally withdrawn from Council membership. They cite fundamental disagreements with tribute policies and announce their intention to join the human Commonwealth of Worlds." The hall fell silent. The Velkari were not a major power, but they were a full Council member with a significant mining operation. Their departure represented the first formal defection in over 800 years. Before anyone could respond to this news, another aide brought additional messages, then another. The pattern became clear. Across Council space, member species were watching the emergency session through public broadcasts and making their own decisions about the future. "The OSEC Trade Union has announced its withdrawal," Throgan read from successive messages. "The Thren agricultural communes have filed notice of non-renewal of their membership agreement. The Helix Mining Syndicate demands immediate renegotiation of tribute terms, or they will begin discussions with human representatives." Each announcement hit the Assembly like a physical blow. Representatives stared at each other in growing panic, as the foundation of their civilization cracked beneath them. Dr. Morduk, who had been quietly analyzing the incoming data, requested permission to address the Assembly. "Honorable representatives, we are witnessing a cascade failure of the Council system. Each defection encourages others. Each successful renegotiation emboldens additional demands." "Then we stop the cascade," Admiral Zorthak declared. "Military intervention now, before the situation becomes uncontrollable." "You cannot stop an idea with military force," replied Dr. Morduk. "The humans have introduced a concept that appeals to species we have never considered important enough to satisfy. They offer partnership instead of membership, cooperation instead of tribute, voluntary association instead of mandatory compliance." Representative Kethvor from the Philosophical Council stood slowly. His ancient form commanded respect even in the chaos of the emergency session. "Perhaps the question we should ask is not how to defeat the human system, but whether their system might actually be superior to ours." The suggestion caused uproar. Voices rose in anger and disbelief. The idea that their 3,000-year-old civilization might be improved by lessons from a species barely a century into space travel seemed impossible to accept. But in the back of the hall, some representatives sat quietly, considering the possibility. They thought about species in their own territories that struggled under tribute burdens. They remembered negotiations where Council policies had seemed inflexible and unfair. They wondered if the human approach might actually work better for everyone. As the debate continued into the night, data flowed in from human space. The Commonwealth continued to function smoothly. Trade increased. Living standards improved. New technologies were developed and shared freely among member species. Most importantly, no species showed any sign of regretting their decision to join the human system. Meanwhile, Council space grew more unstable by the hour. Protest movements spread across dozens of worlds. Independence parties gained support on planets that had been loyal Council members for centuries. The rigid tribute system that had once seemed so stable now looked fragile and outdated. In the early hours of the morning, Speaker Throgan called for a final vote on Admiral Zorthak's proposal for military intervention. The result was closer than anyone had expected, but the motion failed. The Council would not go to war to preserve their system of governance. Instead, they faced a more difficult challenge, learning to compete with an alternative that seemed to offer everything they provided, but without the costs their members were no longer willing to pay. As the emergency session ended, Representative Veltar walked slowly back to his quarters. Through the station windows, he could see ships departing for home systems across the galaxy. Many carried representatives who would return to face growing demands for change. Others carried messages that might determine the future of galactic civilization. For the first time in his long career, Veltar was not certain the Council would survive to see another emergency session. 1 year after humans first said no to the Galactic Council, Ambassador Sarah Chen sat in a very different kind of meeting room. The chamber was smaller than the Grand Assembly Hall, built in a space station that orbited a neutral star system between Commonwealth and Council territories. The walls were transparent, offering a view of ships from dozens of different species docked at the station's various ports. Across the curved table from Chen sat former Council Speaker Throgan. His once magnificent robes looked tired now, and his forearms moved with less authority than she remembered. Behind him sat 3 other Council representatives, including Ambassador Veltar, whose expression showed the strain of the past year. Ambassador Chen, Throgan began, his voice carrying none of its former commanding tone. Thank you for agreeing to these negotiations. Chen nodded politely. The Commonwealth believes in talking to all civilizations that seek peaceful relations. We are curious to hear what the Council proposes. The word proposes hung in the air with significant weight. For 3,000 years, the Council had not needed to propose anything to anyone. They had offered terms, and species had accepted them, or faced the consequences of isolation. Now the Council was in the position of making requests. Throgan activated a small holographic display between them. The current situation benefits no one. The galaxy is being divided into competing systems. This creates instability and the potential for conflict. I agree that division is unfortunate, Chen replied. But the Commonwealth has always been open to cooperation with Council species. We have trade agreements with over 200 Council members. Our mutual defense treaties have helped protect Council territories from pirate attacks. How exactly are we creating instability? Ambassador Veltar leaned forward slightly. The problem is not your actions, Ambassador. The problem is the effect your success has had on our member species. The Council system depends on unity and shared sacrifice. When species see alternatives that appear more attractive, it undermines the foundation of our civilization. Chen considered this carefully. Through the transparent walls, she could see a Velkari mining ship docking next to a Thren agricultural vessel. Both species had left the Council system in the past year, but they worked together now as equals in the Commonwealth network. Perhaps the Foundation needed to be examined, she said finally. The Commonwealth does not oppose the Council system. We simply offer a different approach. If your member species prefer your way, they are free to remain with you. If they prefer our way, they are free to join us. Choice benefits everyone. Choice leads to chaos, protested Council economist Kelvorth, speaking for the first time in the meeting. The tribute system ensures equal distribution of resources across all member species. Your trade-based approach creates winners and losers. Does it? Chen asked. Our economic data suggests that Commonwealth species show more even development than Council species. When the OSEC Trade Union was paying tribute to the Council, their outer colonies barely had enough food. Now they trade their transportation services for Thren agricultural products and Velkari mineral supplements. Everyone eats better. She activated her own display, showing comparative development statistics between Commonwealth and Council territories. Over the past year, the numbers were difficult to argue with. Your system may show short-term benefits, Throgan said, but it cannot provide the long-term stability that the Council has maintained for millennia. What happens when conflicts arise between Commonwealth members? What happens when external threats require coordinated response? Your voluntary association will collapse under pressure. Chen smiled, remembering similar arguments from a year ago. We have already faced several tests of that theory. The Helix Syndicate disputes with the Thren communes over mining rights and overlapping systems. The pirate raids on Velkari shipping lanes. The ancient defense system that awakened in the Osek territories. And how did your voluntary system handle these crises? The same way any community handles problems. People talked, negotiated, and found solutions that worked for everyone involved. The Helix-Thren dispute was resolved through joint mining operations that benefit both species. The pirate raids were stopped by coordinated Commonwealth patrols. The ancient defense system was safely shut down by a joint research team from 5 different member species. She paused, letting the information settle. The difference is that solutions came from the affected parties working together, rather than from central authority imposing decisions. Through the meeting room windows, more ships were arriving. Representatives from across the galaxy came to this neutral station to negotiate trade deals, defense agreements, and cooperative research projects. The Commonwealth had become a hub of voluntary association that operated parallel to the Council system. Throgan looked older than when the meeting had started. What do you want from us, Ambassador Chen? The Council has governed this galaxy for 3,000 years. We cannot simply abandon our responsibilities to billions of citizens. We are not asking you to abandon anything, Chen replied gently. We are asking you to consider expanding your options. The Council system works well for many species, but it does not work well for all species. Instead of requiring universal compliance, why not allow for multiple approaches? You mean coexistence between the Council and Commonwealth systems? I mean recognition that the galaxy is large enough for different kinds of civilization. Some species prefer the security and stability of the Council's hierarchical structure. Others prefer the flexibility and autonomy of the Commonwealth's network approach. Both can contribute to galactic peace and prosperity. Ambassador Veltar spoke quietly. But if we acknowledge that alternatives to the Council system are legitimate, what happens to our authority? What happens to species that signed tribute agreements under the assumption that they had no other choice? The question revealed the heart of the Council's crisis. Their authority had always depended on being the only viable option for spacefaring species. Once alternatives existed, their power became dependent on consent rather than necessity. Perhaps, Chen suggested carefully, authority based on consent is more stable than authority based on lack of options. The Commonwealth has never had a member species leave us. Can the Council say the same? The Council representatives looked uncomfortable. In the past year, over 30 species had left the Council system. None had attempted to leave the Commonwealth. What specific arrangements are you proposing? Throgan asked. Chen had been hoping for this question. Formal recognition of the Commonwealth of Worlds as an equal partner in galactic governance. Mutual defense agreements to address threats that affect both systems. Trade protocols that allow free commerce across system boundaries. Diplomatic procedures for resolving disputes between Council and Commonwealth members. Equal partners, Veltar repeated slowly. Not subordinate systems, but equals. The galaxy belongs to all of us, Chen said. No single system of government should control everything. Cooperation between equals produces better results than submission to authority. The negotiations continued for 3 days. The final agreement was unlike anything in galactic history. The Council and Commonwealth would coexist as separate but equal systems of civilization. Species could choose which system better served their needs. Both systems would cooperate on matters of mutual interest while respecting each other's independence. When the signing ceremony concluded, Chen stood with Throgan looking out at the busy spaceport. Ships from Council and Commonwealth territories docked side by side, their crews working together on shared projects. You have changed everything, Throgan said quietly. The galaxy will never be the same. Chen nodded. Change is not always comfortable, but it is necessary for growth. The Council system served the galaxy well for 3,000 years. Now it can serve even better as part of a larger community of equals. 6 months later, the changes were visible throughout the galaxy. Former Council tribute worlds negotiated new agreements based on mutual benefit rather than mandatory payments. Commonwealth principles of voluntary association spread to species that remained within the Council system, leading to internal reforms that made Council membership more attractive. Most importantly, the idea that civilizations could choose their own path had taken root across the galaxy. New forms of government emerged. Experimental communities formed around shared values rather than geographic boundaries. The rigid hierarchy that had defined galactic civilization for millennia gave way to a diverse network of cooperation. Ambassador Chen, now serving as the Commonwealth's first galactic coordinator, received reports from across known space. Conflicts were being resolved through negotiation rather than force. Technology was being shared more freely than ever before. Living standards were rising for species that had been marginalized under the old system. The humans had not conquered the galaxy. They had not imposed their will on other species. They had simply demonstrated that saying no to unfair terms was possible, and that alternatives to established systems could work. In doing so, they had given the galaxy something more valuable than any technology or territory: the knowledge that choice, cooperation, and voluntary association could create a civilization worthy of the stars.